Hello, salty subscribers. If you follow me on Instagram at @thesaltysugarplum, you will see that I like to post the occasional attitude picture. Sometimes I'm doing a high attitude where it looks like I'm kicking my head. I call this the Esmeralda because she kicks the tambourine behind her head in the variation. And then sometimes I do this one with the extreme port-de-bras back towards my leg. I call this one the Swan Lake attitude. But the question is always the same. Everyone wants to know how I do it. I always get comments asking me how to get a higher attitude and can I make a video about it. But before we start, I must note that these hyper attitudes are not really correct position. These hyper extreme positions throw off your entire alignment. With the exception of a few tricks and poses, these high attitudes are not functional. You can't really turn or balance in these positions. So when you see them, just know that this balance is only being held for a short amount of time. It's almost like a snapshot being taken during a grand battement. A correct attitude is one that you can turn in. So for example, your foot lines up directly behind your spine, your hips are even, you have an upright vertical rib cage, and your shoulders are even. A correct and strong attitude derriere very seldom goes above 90 degrees, especially for pirouettes. This is because when you throw your leg up, it becomes very difficult for you to engage your butt cheeks, and therefore you lose stability and you lose the alignment of your pelvis. It is very hard to turn or hold a long balance with uneven hips. Throwing your leg too high can also twist your rib cage. So for example, when your leg goes very high in one direction, your rib cage will pop out in the other direction. So don't get discouraged if your attitude tops out at 90 degrees. That is actually where it is the most functional and the most useful. Even the best dancers seem to keep an attitude of 90 degrees or even a bit lower to sustain multiple pirouettes and long balances. So this hyper attitude really is just a trick. You lose control of your butt muscles, your hips become uneven, and it opens up your rib cage. That's why you can only hold this for a couple seconds. It's really more about aesthetics, like finding a nice shape, and the shape that you make really depends on your training. Some attitude derrieres are held very short and closed, some of them are more lengthened and open, some methods want the foot above the knee or the foot lower than the knee. That is all really up to you and up to how you were trained. But I will say this, if you imagine that you have a string attached to your knee, and imagine that that string is what is pulling your leg up, your attitude will look better. You always want your knee to look lifted. If you think of lifting with the foot, you will have the tendency to turn in the leg, and the leg appears lower. A lifted knee engages your hamstrings, and so you can probably get your leg higher that way. So with all that being said, let's get into how we whack this leg up behind us. So we obviously need to loosen up our back, and it helps if you're already warmed up before you do this. On your hands and knees, just practice carefully kicking your head, but don't actually kick your head, just pretend you're trying to. Then grab your feet in your hands and push your feet back into your hands towards the wall behind you. Lift yourself up and practice rolling. I love this rolling exercise for back flexibility. You've probably seen it in other tutorials. And the hardest part, practice squeezing those back and butt muscles to hold yourself up. This will give you strength to hold those poses for a few seconds. Then come to the bar and, again, carefully, practice kicking your head while standing. This is good for the Esmeralda kick, and the leg is a little more bent for this. If you're feeling warmed up enough, practice some high, forceful balançoires back and forth. This is for height and loosening up your back. Your ribs are naturally going to come forward in a hyper attitude, and you're going to lose some of your core strength, so see if you can get familiar with this feeling. You may have to compensate with different muscles. Then see if you can keep your attitude exactly where it is and practice a port-de-bras back as if you want to lay down on your leg. This is for the Swan Lake attitude. Then from there, well, it's all up to you. It's really just all about practice. Practice, practice, practice. I don't have one little tip or secret. It's about you and your body and finding the sweet spot for each pose. You have to figure out how loose you need to keep your back or how hard you need to squeeze it. Does it look better when you think of keeping your leg almost straight, or do you need to bend it a little bit? You are going to get tired and sore. You have to figure out where in that pose you can freeze your body and try to hold that shape for just a moment longer. Is your weight forward or in back? Are your arms helping you or making it harder? What are your shoulders doing? Can you find the muscles that you need to hold that pose and balance, even for a split second? You will eventually start to figure it out. You'll start to get closer. You'll notice you can hold the pose a little longer. Or maybe one day your back muscles won't burn so much because you'll have gotten stronger. And then there it is. Finally, you hold it. Now what? Well, then you practice some more. Figure out how far your arms can go back without it looking really bad. Or figure out where to position your head. Don't forget, your head weighs a lot. Sometimes it can influence where your body balance is. So don't forget, these hyper attitudes are just held for a snapshot of a moment. You can't turn like this and nobody's expecting you to hold it for a really long time. Most dancers can't even hold this pose without holding onto the bar. The Esmeralda attitude is really just forcefully throwing my leg into this nice shape behind me, and the Swan Lake attitude is just letting my ribs go forward and throwing the weight of my head back to keep me balanced. But even if you don't have a hyper attitude, you can still be a good dancer. Don't get too obsessed with these tricks. I hope this video helped shed some light. Thank you for watching. Remember to stay salty, my salty subscribers. And remember, if you want to follow me on Instagram, I'm at the Salty Sugar Plum. And as usual, the donation page, if you want to donate, here are my little tags. More money equals more studio rental and more tutorial making.